When I made the leap into teaching middle school, I faced daunting and overwhelming challenges. Anna Nichols was there to help. Her blog, Managing the Art Classroom, was a revelatory guide that helped me and my students thrive. Anna's guidance has motivated teachers and transformed art classrooms of every grade level for years. Now, she's here to share her proven techniques and encouragement with all of us. This is Cindy Ingram, and welcome to the Art Class Curator podcast, where we're taking art out of the dark with thoughtful explorations and in-depth interviews designed to ignite curiosity and delight in art classrooms everywhere. I am so excited to welcome Anna Nichols to the podcast. Welcome, Anna.
Good morning. It's so good to be here. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, when I started my podcast, you were actually one of the first people that I thought about interviewing. So I'm thrilled that you are here because I've been following your work while I was teaching, and I found it to be incredibly helpful. So can you tell us a little bit more about you and your background and experiences?
Sure. I started teaching a little bit later than most people. I was about 31 when I started teaching full-time. So I've had lots and lots of experiences outside of the education field dealing with the public and people. When I was a child, I was in a private school setting until 7th grade. And then in the 7th grade, I transferred to public school and got pretty shocked. I got, this culture shock kind of a thing. And I think ever since then, I have been in a position of, what are these people thinking? How can I understand them better? I'm 45 years old now, and I'm still a 7th grader watching and trying to learn. And what's the best way to interact with this group and.
Mm-hmm. So you started teaching 31, and what grade level did you mostly teach?
Well, I did 5 years before that of part-time. I worked at a Christian school doing the before school care program, and I helped the art teacher there who really felt like she didn't have much expertise. She was just kind of hired to come in and provide enrichment, and she knew that I was in school for art education, and so she asked me for help. And for a few years before I started teaching full-time, that's what I did. And then when I started in 2004, it was at a very large middle school, Central Alabama. Poverty levels were relatively high. I think they're at 70% when I left there. So I ran into a college professor of mine a few weeks ago, and he was like, "How are you doing?" And I'm like, "Great." And I told him what I was doing. Now I'm teaching at a private school now. This is my 2nd year to teach preschool through 12th grade. And he goes, you paid your dues at the middle school. And I'm like, yeah, it was a very, very interesting experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. And so you taught middle school for a long time in public school, and now you're in a pre-K through 12.
Pre-K through 12.
You're teaching every single grade pre-K to 12?
Yep.
Oh my gosh. So why did you decide to do that, and how's it going?
Well, my dream job is what I'm doing right now, preschool through 12th grade. I want to learn how to teach everybody. And the school where my son goes is a private Christian school here in our area. And his art teacher was there for, 35 years. He'd been teaching 40. And he told me that he was getting ready to retire. And I was like, really? Oh, okay. Well, let me see if I can get this job. And I applied for it and was hired. But it actually came directly after an experience, I would say about a year after an experience that I had at the middle school where I witnessed a colleague and friend get shoved to the ground. She was assaulted. And at that point, my husband and I decided we need to think about you getting a different job. And so what I tell people now in consulting, if you're in a position where you feel like you're not safe, you need to think about leaving. It's not worth your health. It's not worth your peace of mind to stay in a place like that.
Yeah, definitely. That's terrifying. And we want to be there for the kids, and we want to, help them, but we have to think of ourselves too. And it's not worth the living in fear. That's terrifying. That's really terrifying. So with pre-K through 12, how often do you see them? Do you see them all every day?
No, last year was my first year to do this, and they had the elementary classes set up where I saw all the elementary twice per week, which it was a really good situation because I felt like we had the opportunity to really develop skills, and I got to know the kids. It was great. And then I didn't teach middle school at all the first semester. Oh, wait, yes, I did. I had one middle school class. And then the high school were kind of distributed out it was interesting because like at one point I had kindergarten first thing in the morning, and then directly after kindergarten, I had a high school class. And I would tell them, you guys, let me just take a minute and catch my breath. And I would find myself talking to them in this really loud voice, and I would apologize and say, you guys don't need that. Just, I'm sorry. So it makes your head spin, like going from one grade level to the other like that. It's pretty crazy. This year, I only have my elementary classes once per month, and I'm not really crazy about that, but it's a little bit of a break. It's given me the opportunity to start this consulting business and reach out a little bit more to other art teachers. So come with some good things.
Oh yeah. Once a month, you can't do anything. It's just pure. Yeah. There's nothing. I mean, I guess you do something, but wow. Okay. So what's been the most surprising to you about the switch from middle school to this situation you're in right now?
Oh my goodness. The thing that I had the most trouble wrapping my head around was the elementary kids. They don't want to stop working. They want to continue to, they would stay in there the whole day if they were allowed to. So when it was time to clean up, it was like your teacher's not even in the room. Selective hearing, they just don't want to stop. So that was my biggest challenge last year, was trying to figure out a way to motivate them to stop working. It was crazy.
Yeah, that's the opposite of middle school. Middle school's like, yeah, we're out of here. And it doesn't make any sense because they're just going to math after. Like you would think that.
They want to leave the classroom to go talk to their friends in the hall. That transition, that's kind of like their joy time. They get to talk to their friends and they're free from the teacher. So they're highly motivated to get out of the class. The elementary, not so much.
That's funny. So you've mentioned a few times that you are consulting now. And so I want to talk a little bit about your blog and what journey you're on with the consulting too. So you run the blog Managing the Art Classroom, which listeners, if you have not visited, you probably have visited this blog at least once because there's so many helpful things. So what prompted you to start your blog?
In, 2013, I went to the State Art Education Conference, which I highly recommend. It's a wonderful time to catch up with other art teachers. Your tribe, you go and hang out with people who know exactly what you go through. I was sitting in a middle school meeting and we were talking about something that was kind of lofty in the curriculum or something. And I turned to the lady sitting on my right and said, what is it that is most concerning to you as a middle school teacher? And she said, well, classroom management. I said, yeah. And I turned to the lady sitting on my left and it was the exact same answer. That is, I think, the number one concern for at least middle school teachers.
Yeah.
How do you get the kids to a place where they can learn? How do you calm them down because they're just bouncing off the walls? The emotions and the hormones are going crazy, and they, in middle school at least, will really lash out at teachers. So at that point, I decided that, you know what, this is maybe something that I can do something about. And I began to research. I started the blog as a place to collect information. And because I only knew middle school, I asked some other teachers to help me at the time to answer questions from elementary or high school. But now that I teach preschool through 12th grade, I feel like I have a little bit better of an understanding of the developmental levels and the needs for the different grade levels. So the writing and the outlook has changed for the blog. Mm-hmm. So the blog is, it's just like this big thing floating out there with all this information. And I look at it a little bit like the guy who built the house, one pebble at a time, one rock at a time, or like a person quilting, you just put one piece at a time. So it's been 5 years and I'm still collecting information and I'm still fascinated with human behavior. And my husband, he's always saying, what, you're still working on that? Are you not tired of that? You're going to run out of things to talk about. And I'm like, there's
not really.
Always something new to learn. There's always another strategy, another little bit of information that might help someone. And I'm going to add it to what I've got.
I love that because, you're right. When I went to grad school, we just sat around a table and we talked about ideas and curriculum and we debated about, visual culture and all these like heady things. And then I get into the classroom and I'm like, that didn't help me at all. I felt like I'm a great teacher, but if I can't manage this classroom, and I don't think we ever once talked about how to manage a classroom when I was in grad school, because I did an art ed master's degree and my undergrad's in art history. Mm-hmm. And so I got a little bit through my like teaching certification classes, but most of it I get there and I'm just like, I got to figure this out myself. And so, turning to the internet and books and stuff like that is what I did because we didn't talk about it in school, which was crazy.
It's a very sticky subject. It's a thing that not very many people are comfortable talking about because they don't want to give you bad information. They don't want to advise you to do the wrong thing or to say the wrong thing. So it's a very difficult subject. And one that people that I meet, they kind of look at me funny and they're like, what? Classroom management?
That's a really good point, though, because every time, at my last school, there were some teachers who were brand new and they had a huge problem with classroom management. And I taught the exact same kids and I had zero problems with those kids. Like they were great. And so they would ask me like, what are you doing that's like, can I do? And I was like, I really don't know what to tell you because every teacher is different. So what works for me might not work for you. So it really is. Yeah, you're right. It is a hard topic to talk about. I mean, there are some general standards, I think, that we all can do, but a lot of it comes down to what's your temperament, what's your personality as a teacher, and how does that translate into your relationships with the kids? Yeah. So that is, I see a really good thing in that you've started consulting because then you can work individually with a teacher and talk individually about their own situation. So what are you doing with your consulting now?
Well, what I would like to do is offer some oxygen. And I know that kind of sounds weird, but essentially, if you're on a plane, you're told you put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you can help anyone else. You've got to help yourself.
Yeah.
So that's my primary goal with the blog and with consulting is to build up teachers so that they can get into a position to influence their kids, to teach, to provide that structured learning environment. There are so many things that are working against us now in education, trying to tear us down, that many times teachers just don't know where to turn. And it's almost a shaming thing too, to put yourself out there and say, I need help. Nobody wants to do that. It's a very humbling thing to put yourself in that vulnerable position. But I look at it as it's not a sign of weakness to ask for help. It's a sign of strength. It takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there and say, hey, here's my situation. What do I do? And there's a lot of groups available, like Facebook groups that you're aware of. I know that you're members of some of them, the same ones that I'm in. And you can put a question out there and get lots and lots and lots of information from teachers. It's not all good information, I will say that.
Yes.
With a grain of salt. There was actually one that I was very closely watching last night where a teacher literally broke down in the classroom after being verbally attacked by a student. And she was sent home. The principal had compassion and mercy on her and realized she needs to just take a break. First year. And I just watched all the comments and kind of looked to see who was really offering her some practical advice. Most of it was just, me too. I've been there. I'm right there with you. You're not alone. It's okay. You're human. Don't beat yourself up, that kind of thing. But there wasn't a whole lot of really practical advice. Here's what you do to proactively put yourself in a position of strength where you're not in that vulnerable place where the kids can push you and push you and push you until you just fall apart and start crying.
Yeah.
So there are things that you can do, even as a first-year teacher, to avoid that place where your emotions just completely take over. And I've been there. I know you've probably been there.
Oh, I have.
It's hard, especially as a middle school teacher.
Yeah. Fifth grade class got to me once and I left. The assistant principal came in and she was like, you can go home because it was the last period of the day. And I was like, I'm leaving. I'm getting out of here. I was like, I couldn't. And I don't know that I cried. I probably did. I cry all the time, but I did. They got me. Fifth grade just always gets me, and I've been there. So, and I've noticed a lot lately, I think it might be the time of year. That
it's October. It's awful. Yeah. October is terrible, especially in middle school.
Yeah. I mean, every time I go through those groups, and this will air in November, but still November is probably bad too. But, I'm looking through the groups and everybody's like, I'm so burnt out. I don't know what to do. These kids, I've lost the kids. It's like you're at a point where the newness of the year is gone and you're faced with the entire year of this. And it's just a breakdown month. So what would the person on the group yesterday who was breaking down, what sort of advice do you think she would need to hear at this point?
That's tough because if you're a first year teacher, it's also new. The hardest consultations that I've had are with first year teachers. If you've been teaching for 15 years I can talk to you for a few minutes and hear your story and be able to identify it. Well, if you try this one thing, that will help.
Yeah.
A first year teacher, there may be multiple things that are going on that they haven't been teaching long enough to understand. So the first thing that I really want to say to any teacher that's struggling is it's not you, it's the kids. So
yeah.
There is a classroom management book. I've read tons and tons and tons of classroom management books, but this one particular book has stayed with me, and it's from Marzano, Classroom Management That Works. And he said that on average, there are like maybe 1,800 disruptions in a classroom for the entire year. But if a teacher is really with it and they know what they're doing discipline-wise, they can cut that in half. So what does that mean to, first year teacher? You know what? It's not you, it's the kids. And there are some things that you can do to help, but you're not going to make the bad behavior go away because you're not responsible for their behavior. They are. So the biggest thing is to reach that core of who we are, empower those teachers, and teach that, you know what? There's all these things that are outside of your control. The things that are under your control are just extremely powerful. Classroom management is the number one variable for student achievement. This was found in a mega study of 50 years of research and education. They were looking at what helps students learn. And of the top 10 variables, classroom management is number one. But right beneath that is student aptitude for learning. Like, how are they studying? What are their work habits? What is their cognitive aptitude like? What is their home environment like? What kind of supports do they have at home? There's so many things outside of our control. But we can do things that will help. And the top four that I've learned over the last 5 years, and I don't want to oversimplify something that is this complex, but the biggest things are the teacher's attitude. What place is that teacher coming from? Is it a position of strength? Is it a position of authority? Is it a position of compassion? So if you could picture with me, if you will, a tree. When I first started, this is what I kind of envisioned. The trunk of the tree, the support, this very strong place is the teacher's attitude. What are our thought processes like? What attitude are we coming towards the kids with? And then branching off from that pillar, that trunk, are the other three things that we can be proactive about. And those are discipline, instruction, and motivation.
I love that. When I talk about, I do a lot of, how to talk about art with kids things. And a lot of people are scared about the kids are going to get bored or whatever. And I always tell people, I'm like, if you go in with that, you're feeling already bored going in and you come in with that fear, you're automatically going to, the lesson might flop because your attitude makes a huge difference. So what kind of attitude does a teacher need to bring to an effective classroom?
Okay, let me tell you, this is something that I've heard it stated in so many different ways, and it's so hard to understand until you've actually been able to accomplish that. And I'm going to confess something to you. I'm going to get vulnerable for a second, and I'm going to say my personality is not the type of personality that should have ever succeeded in a classroom. I don't want to influence anybody. I'm just like, let me sit back and put my nose in a book. I'm much more comfortable there. But I have been successful. And I think it's because I just work really hard to overcome all those things that are stumbling blocks. And I'm like, well, my natural inclination is not to influence anybody, but how can I get to the point where I am being an influencer? And I think that's what it boils down to. So Doug Lemoff in Teach Like a Champion calls this attitude, quote unquote, warm stripped. Okay, two sides of the same coin. Michael Lanson talks a lot about leverage and being pleasant, but at the same time making sure that you're holding the kids accountable gently but firmly every time. And then I recently read another quote, and this isn't even by an educator. This is by a lady who is a body language expert, Vanessa Van Edwards. I've been looking into a lot of what she's doing. She studies human behavior. But she says that as far as charisma goes, people that are highly influential and charismatic, they are equal parts warm and competent. But if you're too much of one or the other, like if you're too warm without being competent, you're viewed as a pushover. You're too nice, people are not going to take you seriously. But if you're too competent without equally being warm, you're viewed as being very intimidating. You're powerful, yes. You're smart, yes, but you're not relatable. So as teachers, we have to find whatever grade level we're teaching in. This looks different for elementary and middle and high school. It's totally different. But where is that sweet spot for you as a teacher? Warm, strict.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I love that. And so, yeah, I would think as middle school, you would need to be strict. A little more on the strict. And then a warm in the personal relationships between classes, very strict during the class period. And then elementary, I would say, you need to be both, but like a little maybe more warm during the class. Huh.
It's
I like that.
To think about.
Yeah.
I haven't quite put my finger on how to define that definitively for each grade level, but I kind of am beginning to understand a little bit better with high school. You have to be very personable, very warm, very funny, but you have to have an internal you got to be made of steel with high school. But you can't go overboard with the strict. You can't go overboard talking about rules and expectations because they don't care,
I think, giving them more freedom results in better results, I think, than the others. That's really interesting. Okay, so finding your warm, strict balance, I think that's really good. And I think that I'm thinking of every teacher I've met in the past who struggled. And so I'm thinking of me when I was struggling. I'm like, where did I fall? And I can pinpoint it to one of those. Like I'm either too much of one or too little of another. And
on any given day, we're not going to be in that perfect spot. We're just, always striving to get there.
Yeah. Wow. What a psychological mess being a teacher. What other job do you go in and you're like, how is my attitude going to impact my job today? Yeah, that's interesting. My brain, sorry, every time I'm stuck in a thought and I'm like, I got to go and think about this for a minute. But okay, we're going to talk about it.
I've been thinking about it for 5 years. I still haven't completely understood it yet. So.
Oh, yeah, you really have me thinking about it. And I hope that the listeners are thinking about their own individual situation and how that fits. Okay, so that's our trunk. We want a warm, strict trunk. And then you have discipline, instruction. What was the third one coming off of the trunk? Motivation. So tell us about one of those. Which one you want to start with?
Well, I think that in teacher education programs in colleges, they do a pretty good job of teaching us how to teach. We're really good at pedagogy. We understand the best way to frame the instruction and break things down. So I don't think I've spent too much time on the blog talking about pedagogy. I don't think that's where I'm coming from the most. I think teachers know how to teach. What we struggle with is, I would say, discipline. Probably not so much motivation, although there's plenty of little strategies out there that have helped me when I first started elementary in the motivation category that totally turn around what I was trying to do. But discipline is the stickler. I think a lot of people are just afraid to step into that authoritative role. That's a power stealer for a lot of people. We don't want to risk damaging the relationship that we have with the kids to hold them accountable.
Yeah, I was talking to a teacher recently, and actually I was talking to my friend. Anyway, I heard about this teacher who asked, what do you do if you say no and they don't do it? And so the fact that she didn't know what to do in that situation, she would just not say no. And so they were just running all over the place because she was so scared of what would happen if she said no and they stole her power. So she didn't exert any power. So what would you say in a situation like that, where the teacher doesn't have that strength that you've mentioned several times?
That is something that I've had to overcome as well. And I will say the biggest thing that helped me, and again, I feel like a lot of the things that I say just sound kind of flaky, but it's true. There is, and I've learned recently that there is scientific evidence for what I'm about to say, so please don't think this is completely crazy. The biggest thing that helped me with my assertiveness was learning the power stance, the body language of a leader. And I put a video out on YouTube the other day. I just videoed myself doing the power stance. But what that does, if you put your body in the position of power, of authority, it helps you to feel more like a leader. It has been proven to release testosterone. Even in women, I know that sounds weird, but it helps you just to feel like it. And one of the biggest power stealers for me as a teacher is fear and anxiety. So if I can stand with my feet shoulder width apart, my shoulders back, my chin up. Sometimes I'll even put my hands on my hips. That will help me to overcome that little sense of anxiety that I'm not really in any kind of place to be influencing anyone, which is, how I feel naturally. My natural inclination is just let me read.
Yeah, they say that for job interviews and things like that. Just the way you carry yourself will impact your confidence. And even like smiling, like when I do my video recordings and stuff, I smile while I talk because it impacts the way you sound and the way you feel. So it's like all of those little things. And then, gosh, this is a tangent here again, but like, what kind of job do we have? I was watching, we're on video right now. The podcast listeners are hearing the audio, but she was showing the stance and I'm like, what other job do you really have to like, that's just to do that with your body and to think about these sort of things while being sort of attacked in 30 different ways at one time with different children, not attacked, but what a crazy job we have. Okay. So standing and physically feeling more powerful can help. What are some other discipline strategies that you particularly recommend or do in your classroom?
Discipline as far as holding students accountable, or self-discipline and mindset? Which would you like to address? I think mindset is super important.
Yeah, let's do mindset. I like mindset stuff.
Addressing someone who doesn't necessarily feel confident or feel assertive. Michael Linson, I keep going back to him because he profoundly influenced me when I first started to study classroom management. I mean, there are many, many other books that I've read, but I keep coming back to him. I actually put him to the test for that year, 2013, 2014. I think that was the year. And just kept up with how many kids am I needing to refer to the administration. And before I studied Dream Class, that was the main one I studied. I've read several others of his now. I would refer several kids to administration every 9 weeks. My classroom management plan was you get a warning, then you get separated. You maybe have to do a discipline assignment or a think sheet, and then maybe I call your parents. I have been known to call parents right there in the middle of class. And then if none of those things have helped, then I will refer you to the administration and you have to go do detention or, whatever. How many kids did I refer? Several kids every 9 weeks. But after I read Dream Class, I referred one student the entire year.
Wow.
That's effective. He's an extraordinary writer. Now I've completely lost track of where I was going with Michael Linson.
Well, listeners, if you haven't listened yet, we do have an interview with Michael Linson on the podcast. So I recommend, if you're interested in this, to listen to that. I think it was episode number 2 or 3. It was one of the first. No, it was 3. I don't remember. It was one of the beginning ones. We'll link to it in the show notes. So what was most effective about that strategy?
This is where I was going to go a second ago, because we were talking about how to encourage someone that didn't feel like they had a very assertive nature.
Right.
This helped me because as a person who is highly anxious and something I've struggled with my entire life, my anxiety sometimes comes out in anger. Okay. Mm-hmm. I get mad. And one of the things that Michael Linson teaches is a strategy called decide first. Olympic athletes do this. First thing in the morning before you go to school, before you start teaching, you mentally tell yourself, no matter what happens, no matter if there's a herd of wild horses that run through this classroom, I'm going to stay calm. I'm not getting mad. I'm not getting upset. You just decide that first thing in the morning. It's a mindset. So I began to do that, and it helped me tremendously. It's very powerful to just make a decision first thing in the morning, planning ahead, using your expert power, deciding that you're going to be consistent. It's extremely difficult to discipline yourself to be consistent with the kids. I'm still struggling with that. I still have to tell myself I got to be consistent every time. This is what I need to do. And then again, like a lot of times people will say, well, don't take it personally when the kids act up. Don't take it so much to heart. And that's really hard not to do, not to take it personally, because it feels like it's your fault. It feels like there's something that you did wrong, but it's not you. It's the kids.
Yeah, I think that's sort of a thread that I'm seeing throughout this whole conversation is it really is, if you can separate what they're doing from your emotions, I think, especially as sensitive people, it's a challenge not to just let every little thing get to us. That's huge. So mindset stuff. I'm going to put links to all of these books and stuff you're referencing in the show notes because I think these are super helpful. I really want to look at that Vanessa Van Edwards thing too. And I will also link to your video that you did of your power stance because that I think is just a small little tip that will really help people. So I love that.
That's what I'm going for.
Yeah.
Any one thing that will help you get that oxygen that you need. Just, if it's small or if it's big. I want to be able to help provide that or figure it out, analyze it.
So you're offering consulting now, and I know you have started a nonprofit. So can you tell us how your consulting works and what would a teacher get if they choose to work with you?
Yes. If you would like to get some classroom management consulting, you'll need to either email me at artteacherhelp4al@gmail.com, or you can message me on Facebook through Managing the Art Classroom. I've been doing consultations there. And what I'd love to do is pinpoint, based on your story, what your strengths are. Everybody has different strengths that they bring into the classroom. Not all teachers are outgoing and charismatic. I'm not an outgoing and charismatic person. I'm actually a very studious and shy and quiet person. But I have been successful in the classroom. It's actually a little bit of a miracle that I have been. So I want to be able to build you up and encourage you and tell you, you know what, your strength is in communication, or your strength is in compassion, or your strength is in just being an amazing artist, whatever. Then I'm going to try my very best to analyze what is going on with your situation and figure out 1, 2, 3 strategies that will make the most difference in what is happening in your classroom. And then, I'm a thinker. It may not be immediate. Like if we're talking on the phone for an hour, I might not exactly think of the perfect thing that will help you. It might be a couple of days later, but I'm going to think about it and put together a list of resources for you and send you an email with some things that I feel would help.
Yeah, that's huge because we don't get, when I first started teaching, they assigned me a mentor teacher, but I was the only art teacher. So it was the GT teacher who saw a couple kids, every hour or so. It wasn't the same thing as, kids coming in and out all day long. And I taught 750 kids. And so just having someone to really listen to your situation, it sounds like you're just a really excellent listener. So I think this is a fantastic idea. And I think you can make a big difference on not just that one teacher, but all of their students too. So that's amazing. So we will put your email or link to your Facebook page and maybe to your email in the show notes so that they can get in touch with you to work with you, because I think that's such a wonderful service. And you're also raising money for different teachers, I noticed on Facebook. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, there is a magnet school in Montgomery, Alabama that was lost due to a fire in August. 2 art teachers literally lost everything. They lost all the equipment, all the student art. One was a photography teacher and the other is a visual art painting drawing teacher. So half of all proceeds that I raise this month, I'm going to mail to the 2 art teachers in Montgomery to help a little bit with replacing what they lost.
That's wonderful. And this will air in November, so I might be over, but I will try to share that information. And I'll maybe just try to share it on my own Facebook. That's awesome. So, okay, what else do we want to talk about? I think we covered a lot of the main points, and I really recommend everybody go to Managing the Art Classroom because you write the longest posts that are so incredibly detailed with every option available in any certain topic. So I really highly recommend diving in there because it really is such an amazing resource. So thank you for providing that to everyone out there. Appreciate it. Okay, so final question, which is what I ask everybody, and that is, which artwork changed your life?
Okay, I'm going to say 2 things.
Okay.
The answer to that question is not the answer that you're looking for, and then I'm going to answer your question.
Okay, sounds great.
The first artwork that changed my life and continues to change my life is the Bible, God's Word. It continually speaks to me daily. And then to answer your question, the visual art piece that changed my life was a painting by Jackson Pollock. When I was in college, I was not very knowledgeable in art. I did not have a good art experience in high school. So I was very, very, very ignorant of most things when it comes to visual art when I got to college. And my lovely art history professor, Dr. Sandra Jordan at the University of Montevallo, was talking about 20th century art styles. And she had one of the drip paintings up. Now, this is a large screen, completely fills your vision. And I can remember looking at this drip painting and having to close my eyes. I had to look away.
Wow.
I could not view this without feeling extremely uncomfortable. And it was the first time in my life that I understood the power of art to communicate. Jackson Pollock was a very troubled man. He was an alcoholic. He had lots of issues. And to me, when I look at a Jackson Pollock, I see so much anxiety and so much just turmoil that I have a hard time looking at it. So that's what I teach my students now, that even though, yes, it's just art, art is not always about pretty pictures. We like to create beautiful things and we like to share positive emotions, but art can also be gripping and teach you about yourself too, and teach you what you don't necessarily like about yourself.
Yeah. That moment of, when an artwork and a person meet, you never know what it's going to be, that's something in your life triggered by that artwork. And that it's just that magical moment. And sometimes it's so uncomfortable. I've had artworks that I couldn't look at as well. That just.
What about you? What is the one artwork?
Oh, I have so many. Well, actually, and I've told the story on the podcast of the one that made me rethink my whole career. So I won't tell that one again, but that was Picasso's Girl Before a Mirror.
Yes.
But related to yours was Guernica by Picasso. Yes. It's always been one of my favorite paintings. I just love it. And that's 2 Picassos there I've mentioned. But I had a layover in Madrid when I went to Rome last year. A 24-hour layover from Madrid somehow because we got really cheap plane tickets. And so I was like, well, in that 24-hour layover, I have to go see Guernica. I have to do it. And I went there and I was expecting to be moved and to cry because I'm seeing this painting that I loved. But instead, I just was so affected by the trauma of it and the pain and the horror and the terror in that painting because it was so big and you could not get away from it. And so I just couldn't. I would look at it and then I had to turn away, but then you turn away and then he had all the sketches behind all the sketches he was doing to prepare for Guernica on the wall. And then those were almost even worse than the actual paintings because they were just women screaming and crying. I just was completely wrecked, totally and completely wrecked by that painting. So, and I just still think about it and I don't know. That's how. And then at the same time was the Syria refugees. It was at that time. And so I had just seen videos of people covered in dust from all the bombings and stuff. And, I had seen a video of a guy holding a baby crying. And I'm like, this is real life right now. And this is real life back in Picasso. So it just emotionally wrecked me. But yeah, art has the power to do all sorts of things to us. And I love that yours was an abstract expressionist artwork. You hear about people crying and getting moved by Rothkos and stuff like that. And I just love it because you never know what it's going to be. And every time you go to a museum, you never know what artwork is going to talk to you that day. And it could be totally different than the last time you saw it, because of where you're at in your life. So that's why we need to look at art and make art too.
It's fantastic. I really enjoy seeing all the things that you put out.
Thanks.
As the art class curator. It's always very interesting seeing that I can talk about art and how to teach art to children. And I've enjoyed listening to a few of the podcasts as well. I listened to the one that you interviewed Chris Screws, who teaches high school here in Alabama and has the FX program. It's the only one like it in the state. And I listened to the Michael Winson one, which is always so interesting hearing him talk about his ideas. And then the one that you did is Monica, where you talked about a highly sensitive teacher and how we cope in the school day. That was wonderful. And I think that it was probably extremely difficult for those ladies to get out of their comfort zones and talk about something so vulnerable.
Yeah, I was really impressed with them. And Monica especially, she, I think, had never told any of the people she worked with that she was struggling in that way. And that when she had the interview, she started to talk to the people at her school and tell them about her. And she has many more connections in her school. And she met a lot of people that were like her at her school. And then I feel like her life has been improved since she opened up like that. So I love when people get vulnerable, and because it does make your life better to make those connections. So
absolutely.
I'm glad
that you're not alone, that you're not the person that has had to go through whatever it is that you're going through.
Yeah. That's why, the internet's amazing. When I first started, we didn't have any of this, and I just felt totally alone. So now we're all out there connecting, and I think it's amazing.
especially for art teachers, because most of us
Yeah.
are the only one.
Yeah.
No, I would
Definitely.
say that the vast majority of art teachers, we are alone in the school.
Thank you so very much. It was great to talk to you. I've been admiring your work for a long time, so it's awesome to get the chance to talk to you in person.
Back at you, I admire greatly what you do as well, and I
Thank
appreciate
you.
the opportunity. It's been fun.
Awesome. Well, I hope everybody takes you up on your consulting offer and that you get all sorts of people to help. So thank you so very much and have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and give us an honest rating on iTunes. This will help other teachers find us and hear these amazing stories. Do you want even more art inspiration? Sign up for Art Class Curator's once a week email newsletter, Your Weekly Art Break. Teacher Sarah Warnock says, I truly do take a break from my busy week to check all your links and feel inspired. Everything you share is relevant, meaningful, and also super helpful. You definitely help me become a better art teacher, and I look forward to your emails each week. You can sign up at artclasscurator.com/artbreak. And as a free gift for subscribing, you'll get 6 free art interpretation worksheets to use in your classroom. Be sure to tune in next week for more inspiring art interviews. Thanks again to Anna Nichols for the awesome conversation and all of the support that she gives to art teachers everywhere. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Anna as much as I did. And remember, if you're struggling, there are people ready to help you. Please check out the show notes at artclasscurator.com/29 to learn more about Anna's work and find out how she can help you improve your classroom management game. Next week, we're talking with the legendary Phyllis Brown of There's a Dragon in My Art Room. Even though she's retired, Phyllis is an active member of the art education community, constantly dedicating her time and energy to presenting at conferences and writing on her blog. Keep listening to hear a preview of my interview with Phyllis.